This video is brought to you by our patrons. If you want to make sure we can create more content like this, consider supporting us on our Patreon. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Chapter 9 of Capitalism, Socialism and Democracy by Joseph A. Schumpeter. This chapter is called Closed Season. It is for the reader to decide how far the preceding analysis has attained its object. Economics is only an observational and interpretive science, which implies that in questions like ours, the room for difference of opinion can be narrowed but not reduced to zero. For the same reason, the solution of our first problem only leads to the door of another, which in an experimental science would not arise at all. The first problem being whether there is an understandable relationship between the structural features of capitalism and the economic performance we observed. First, Schumpeter analyzed capitalism the typical way, but then diverged from the norm in his opinion on monopolies, the point of this being what practically everyone concedes is good about capitalism of a perfect competition is actually true to a greater extent of a capitalism with imperfect competition. So while we cannot take capitalism, isolate it, put it in a lab, run experiments, and come to definite conclusions on anything, we can acknowledge that there has been quite a striking performance, and that the capitalist arrangement was favorable to producing it. But like he said before, this only leads us to the door of a new problem. That problem being, how do we know that this performance is not due to factors outside of the capitalist system? External variables, if you will. We will attack this problem by addressing 5 possibilities. 5 possible external factors to take credit for the growth instead of capitalism. Number 1, government action. Now, while Schumpeter agrees with Marx that politics and policies are not separate or external factors from economics, we will just pretend they are for the sake of this isolated argument. And the argument is quite quickly defeated, because if we look at the period of quintessential small government or absence of government involvement, we would be looking at the period between about 1870 and 1914. Well, in the period from about 1870 to 1914, we had an absence of political and policy interference, both in the positive and negative sense. Positive being there was an absence of government policies to try to stimulate the growth of the economy, and negative in that there wasn't any significant wars or anything in this time that one might imagine could harm the state of the economy. So in the absence of all these things, we still saw the growth, the performance that we have been observing and contemplating this whole time.
Boom. Roasted.
The next possibility, the second possibility, is gold. Well, this is pretty easy to rule out because the discovery of gold doesn't really match up with our timeline of economic growth. For our first 20 years or so of rapid growth, gold was pretty scarce. So this is not an adequate possibility.
Boom. Roasted.
Our third possibility is population growth. Well, population increase and economic growth are, in fact, both causes and consequences of one another, and it is thus difficult to detangle this relationship, to view population increase as an external factor for the purpose of our analysis. But Schumpeter does concede to whatever extent population increase was independent, it certainly did play a role in economic growth. And so for whatever fraction that is, we can take a little credit away from an isolated vision of capitalism itself. But we should note, in terms of systems and efficiency, a system with a larger amount of people, there is less output per head than in a smaller population of employed people. And so when we still see such a massive growth in output under capitalism, we are in fact understating the performance of capitalism when we adjust it to a per capita measurement. So a point conceded to population increase, but another point back to capitalism.
Boom. Roasted.
Possibility number 4 is new land. Yes, we are thinking of American expansion. Now, this is our most compelling possibility so far, imagining all of the new resources and space new land can bring. However, new land is not different from any other frontier that a businessman can discover. A modern example might be the frontier of the internet and the wonderful resource harvesting of your data. And further, it is not possible to separate it from the economic process to then label it as an external factor. Industry and innovation is what made the harvesting of these resources and ability to go into the new territory possible. Think advancements in transportation, and thus new land equal capitalism.
Boom. Roasted.
And our last possibility is technological progress, and you can probably guess where this is going. Technological progress is capitalism.
Boom. Roasted.
And to clarify, that's not to say that Schumpeter is saying technological progress or innovation don't happen with any other system, possibly. I mean, maybe he does think that, but just what he's saying right here is that it is a part of capitalism and therefore cannot be viewed as an external factor. I think the nuances between those two statements could be lost when getting this information from a summary. And that is the end of this chapter. If you enjoyed it, please hit a like and subscribe. Consider joining our Patreon, and we will see you soon with Chapter 10. The Vanishing Investment Opportunity. Woohoo, fun!